Sam, look, we appreciate the efforts, but I see you got a kid going to school. You got all kinds of things going on. We'll settle for phone this time, my friend. How are you?
Fair enough. I was trying, Dave. I was almost there.
I saw you. Saw your hand working the phone. And was that Landon next to you or right? I couldn't tell. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Landon. Yes, indeed.
Also, wanted you to know that Jane on the text line thinks you're the best journalist in America.
Thank you, Jane. Man, that's a good name right there, Jane.
Yeah, see, there you go. And I hope that covers up what I'm sure to be vitriol from you because I did not call you back. And I apologize.
You didn't. I was a little hurt by that, not gonna lie.
Yeah, sorry. But, called me at a bad time, but it's nothing.
All good.
Nothing personal.
You were partying.
No, yeah, I was partying. Sam, Oklahoma City and Cleveland are a combined like 102 and 11. We were talking about this 103 and 11. I think we were talking about this earlier. We look up on the TV. Well, currently right now, because before when we looked up, it was the Cowboys offseason on the left national show, and on the right national show, it was the current run the Lakers are on. Right now on the left TV national show, it's Peyton Pritchard and Derek White combined for 84. And on the right, Kendrick Perkins is saying right now the Lakers are saving the NBA. Sam, you work in a business in which you guys need hits. You know your view counts. Is it just as simple as the national populace is less interested in excellence and more interested in market? Am I close?
I don't know. I think it's a little more nuanced. Man, you're grumpy this morning.
No. I'm just sticking up for the little guys is all. No. I don't mean that as a shot at anyone. I honestly, I don't. Well, maybe a shot at the other national guys. I know you guys do your work. I'm just saying, golly, shouldn't we be?
I mean, I hear you, but the human, like to me, the obvious elephant in the room is, and admittedly, I'm on the defensive probably as somebody who has written stories about Luka Doncic, like four of my past 6 stories, is, there's a steady drumbeat of OKC and Cleveland, which is been going on since October and has not, like, it's interesting and it's got to get covered and the excellence has to be examined and analyzed and appreciated. But, the new developments are Lakers, Warriors, things of that nature. Who else did you just mention that was on the TV? Boston?
Oh, yeah, Boston, yeah.
I mean, defending champs. I mean, there's not. The Cavs' winning streak should be getting it's just due. We actually just had a nice piece on Shea Gilgeous-Alexander that Fred Katz did at our place that is getting rave reviews. I mean, I hear you in general. It's just the idea that. It's, like the Warriors, for example, here's my comp. If you go back to their 73-win season, at least with that type of excellence, you had a record that they were chasing, and it kind of made it a more compelling storyline from beginning to end because of that history. OKC and Cleveland not in the running for that. And now both those teams represent squads where it's like, okay, you're incredible as regular season contenders. Now let's see what you do in the playoffs. That storyline doesn't come until later.
On the OKC front, Sam, I'm curious if you think it feels like it's SGA or the Joker for league MVP. Maybe Giannis still getting some love and a few other guys. But do you think SGA is in a position with record, with his performance, that it's his to lose right now?
I don't know if it's his to lose. I'm forgetting exactly how close the recent, the latest ESPN MVP poll that I take part in was. So I voted SGA, and if anybody doesn't know what I'm referencing, it's a pretty accurate poll that Tim Bontemps does at ESPN, where he reaches out to roughly 100 would-be voters. It's not technically the actual voters, but guaranteed it's a lot of them, if not most of them, myself included. So we anonymously put in our top 5, and then you get to take a pulse on the race. And, I believe SGA was out front. I just don't know by how much. It's, that calculus of like OKC being as dominant as they are, combined with like the one stat that I think is keeping him ahead of Joker, because it's typically been the stat that the Joker dominates more than anybody else, is what happens to his team when that guy's not on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And SGA's on-off number is just as dominant as Joker's. Not only that, there's all these lineups with the Thunder that are really, really fascinating and impressive, where, no Jalen Williams, no Isaiah Hartenstein, no Lou Dort, I believe, and the Thunder with Shea still dominate, which is, that cuts into the fact that, man, you're taking your best players off the floor and he's still that good. So, Joker, I do think is right there. It's tricky because, in a vacuum, Joker's season is arguably better than any of his MVP seasons.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes for a pretty high level, fascinating MVP race.
Sam, you and I have both been critical and have at separate times and simultaneously gotten killed for it by some of the fan base of the Sacramento Kings, and whether it's their moves, the Fox situation, the personnel, the mix, and all that. And look, nobody wants to start fitting anybody for rings yet. It's a good 4-game stretch, but hey, 3-1 on the road trip. I think they should have won last night. I'm not a refs guy unless it's 2002, but I thought the refs were. Ed Malloy had a terrible night last night. This team comes back for a very emotional game tomorrow versus De'Aaron Fox and the San Antonio Spurs, and right now it looks like they're buying in a little bit from Doug Christie on defense, which is something we'd hope they do leading in.
No, they look good. They do for sure. By the way, shout out Ty Jerome, the Cavs guard, who called out Natalie, the referee, the other day. That's who you sound like, just putting Ed Malloy on blast. Calling him out by name.
He was not great. Even DeMar DeRozan yelled about him. Yeah. Even DeMar DeRozan was yelling about the guy.
Yeah, and I get it. I mean, I watched the game, and certainly I think they had one free throw in the second half, if not the last 3 quarters. So, that part was pretty imbalanced. They look good. And that like measured tone you're hearing is, I admittedly just can't wrap my head around what I think of them as a group, because especially with Fox coming back, it just underscores the fact that it's, and I've kind of shared this opinion even with the Kings, where no, it's good. And I mean, this fan base should never forget that, if they can get to the playoffs, that matters. If they can have 3 consecutive winning seasons after 16 losing seasons in a row, that matters. It's still, though, when I look at it, it's the ceiling is pretty low, and they don't have as much, at least for now, of a kind of a vision or a plan in terms of, which guys. I mean, you went from the Fox, Sabonis, Keegan Murray, then adding DeMar to it, kind of core to this, the kind of Bulls West with DeMar and Zach, and Jonas has been great, especially with Sabonis' injury. So, I mean, there are a bunch of pros, with Doug doing a really nice job. I think they're 19-11 since Doug took over. So right now it's good. It's right. I'm very curious to see. My head, I guess, admittedly, is already a little bit in the off season when it comes to this team.
Sure.
Well, I know a lot. We've already talked about it some, but now we're here, Sam, for tomorrow night. I mean, Kings Spurs, it's important for the Kings in the standings. For the fans, it may be important for the emotions of some. I'm sure will cheer De'Aaron Fox. Some, I'm sure will jeer him and go the other way. Now that we're here, and they're without Wembanyama, the Kings are doing what they're doing. Just love your overall thought on just kind of a prediction on how you think, not the game, but just Fox's night, his reception, and all, how he'll handle tomorrow night will go.
Yeah, we'll see. I do think it's one of those times, and we've talked about this, where we're about to see how wide the disconnect is between social media and real life, in terms of the booing. And, because if you went just by social media, you would think it's going to be, pretty spirited and pretty negative in his direction. I mean, actually, enough to throw it back at you guys, what, in your recollection, is kind of the most toxic, booing type Kings environment that you can remember with somebody coming back, or with any sort of, Kings home game environment?
Buddy Hield
Buddy
got
Hield
booed every time he touched the ball.
Yeah, most recently it was Buddy. Spencer Hawes.
Bagley did too.
Bagley did. There's Jason Terry. But I think honestly, Hawes and Buddy were probably the biggest. I think it's funny you mentioned social media, Sam, because I actually put a poll out on social media, which, of course, it's a small segment, but it did surprise me. It was like 75% were either going to cheer or not emote at all. 25% said they would boo. And I imagine tomorrow, here's my prediction. I think it will be very much dominated by cheers, but I think there will be enough people booing to where you'll be able to hear it in the arena and on the broadcast. They'll cut through.
Sure.
And then it'll piss over. Oh, here we go. Oh, here we go. And then of course, what we hope doesn't happen is that he hears the booze, it pisses him off, and he goes for 50.
I mean, that probably will. I mean, that's his wiring. That's a heck of a list you shared, by the way, of those different guys. It's such a random cast of characters.
Mhm.
Well, Spencer Hawes was always in. I always
get because that one I get right because that was the Seattle stuff.
That was the Seattle stuff. Buddy already had kind of a weird relationship with the fan base, but then he said that he was caught on camera saying Sacramento can do something that you don't want to say out loud to him. And then what was the Marvin? Yeah, the Marvin one
just wasn't Luka.
And those boos were also, I think, a little more for his dad. I always felt like those boos weren't on Marvin himself. But the Fox thing, look, Fox has always been pretty straightforward in how he thinks. And some people, myself and you included, get it, or I shouldn't say get it, aren't bothered by it and see it differently, and others see it as a swipe at the city, and that they paid their money. They'll have their feelings known.
Yeah. I mean, I will say the distinction you just made shouldn't be forgotten regarding, Spencer, Buddy, those are at the city perceived attacks. You know what I mean? De'Aaron calling out dysfunction within an organization that is widely known to be historically dysfunctional that's at the organization. That's not at the city.
Right.
And, so admittedly, I would like to see him get appreciated as somebody who put in good time.
Well, I'm sorry. I was going to say, Sam, you and I are in lockstep on this, but I would say, and you've seen this too, I don't know how much of it is that and the real issue being whether true or not that De'Aaron Fox and Rich Paul forced Sacramento's hand and Monty's hand to make the trade to only one place, which lowered the value, which in turn screwed the Kings. Plus, also someone unfollowed somebody on Instagram, I think. I don't know. But I feel like that's really more of the pulse of the anger. I could be wrong.
No, that's fair. I mean, at least I guess accurate is the word. It does seem pretty evident, not really disputable at this point, that at least at the end, Domas and Fox were not on the same page. I mean, that part has been established. In terms of the trade, whatever, we've talked about this in the past. It's a longer conversation where part of me lands on the idea that let's just go ahead and say that, they obviously did push it to one team. They obviously did limit the Kings' real options. Those are facts. But I think I said even last week, reminding folks that if you went back to when the Kings traded Tyrese Halliburton, there was a moment when De'Aaron was on the table in that situation. And the point being that when the players are getting, moved around the league like kind of pieces on a game board against, not necessarily against their will, but without having any control, fans don't have as much of a problem with that. But when they kind of exert their influence on where they'll land in a trade, for some reason, that is kind of, considered unsavory.
Are you going to be at the game tomorrow night, Sam?
I will be.
Okay.
I will be there.
Nice.
We're juggling a few wrestling things like always, but I will make it happen.
Okay.
Weird enough, Christopher Loud was at wrestling last night
yeah.
at the Memorial Auditorium.
Different wrestling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A little pro wrestling action.
Yeah.
I would. I'm not going to be at the game tomorrow. But if I was, I would.
You in England again?
No, I've been to. Yeah, I've been to one game this year. I went to that Miami double overtime.
Oh,
game.
nice.
No, but if I was, I would bring you a Fox jersey to go with my Fox jersey, and then you and I could just absolutely slobber all over Fox for the entire game, because that's what we do, Sam. You and I are the biggest Fox apologists in Sacramento. We should just wear it.
Comment section right now.
Say that again.
Is this in the comment section right now?
Yeah, it's YouTube, it's Reddit, it's all that. We've been having fun with that all week. That I really am. I'm so freaking tired. I'm so happy this game is here because I want it to be over with, so we can just. I'm good. I'm done. We have litigated this thing over and over and over again. But I don't know that I've ever. It's weird. I think I am in lockstep with the majority of the fan base, but also have never been more out of touch with a decent sized part of the fan base. I would just say, I think the reaction, the vitriol has really kind of caught me off guard. And I'm going to probably think a lot about it over, enough to where you always want to go, God, am I out of touch? Am I missing something here? But at the same time, like we've just said over and over and over again, everybody's got their battle lines drawn. And there are some people that I think it's a little misdirected hostility, but they would say you and I are crazy, Sam.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like we've lost the plot a little bit, meaning that, even yesterday I was talking to somebody about the Mike Brown subplot, right? And the idea that, like we've talked about, not only did he not get Mike fired, but he was upset. And this, Dave, you talked to him about the way the organization didn't clarify that he didn't get Mike fired. Well, so, yesterday talking to a casual Kings fan, if you will, that storyline came up, and the first thing out of their mouth was like, the guy got the coach fired, and then he did this. And it's like that, that the plot was lost at that point, things like that, where you kind of lose track of what people are upset with him about. And then you wonder how much of it is accurate, obviously. So all of which is to say that going into tomorrow, it's probably a total crapshoot where, who knows where everybody's heads are at.
Yeah, Sam, I'm thinking about, the Kings on this road trip, went through Dallas, got the win in the game. I just hated to see Kyrie get hurt, but I just think about Dallas's plight now and what they have been through, from the Luka trade to AD getting hurt to now Kyrie getting hurt. They're on the bubble. They could still get in. I just don't know what their short-term future is. What are some of your guys and colleagues saying about what Dallas is going through right now?
Well, I'm always good for at least one shameless athletic plug, and I'm looking down at my phone here. The great Marcus Thompson, who is, if you don't read him, you should be. He's one of the finest writers in the game. Had a column about Mavs fans that was like perfectly toned in terms of sympathy, empathy, and humor at the same time. It was basically like, Mavs fans deserve better, but it went deeper with it. It talked about the absurdity of this sequence of events. It's just unbelievable. I saw something yesterday that I don't necessarily co-sign, but the fact that this was a conversation was wild to me. Was Kevin O'Connor at The Ringer on a podcast was obliterating Nico Harrison, the Mavs GM, and essentially drawing a through line from the choice to trade Luka to the fact that AD, and honestly, there is some logic here. The fact that AD rushed back because you now had to fix the PR and the optics. So we need AD to come out and be a monster because he's the guy we got in the Luka trade. Well, then AD gets hurt, for a long time with the adductor injury. Feels like he came back too early. Kyrie Irving was playing more minutes than anybody in the NBA for, I think, the last 6 weeks. He's not a young man. It's safe to kind of say that was a reaction to the Luka trade. And so the bodies keep falling. The season ticket prices keep rising. The frustration and anger also keeps rising. That whole situation, I don't think is going to cool down for quite a while. But it's just a miserable season for Mavs fans.
Last things, Sam, and I'm going to drag us right back into the mud. I'm thinking while you're talking about this and looking at just reading stuff. I think what really if I'm being transparent and dare I say a tiny bit vulnerable about this whole thing, I think what really bothers me about this Fox thing. Look, you're a journalist with a capital J. I know you obviously have an affinity for the Kings. You covered the team. You raised your kids in Elk Grove, but your job's to be impartial. Mine is not. I'm very, very partial towards everything is about this team being worthy of this city and giving these fans the team they deserve and the championship they deserve. The thing that really, I think, actually grates at me the most is when it's like there's some sort of advantage to taking this side. Like there's some sort of advantage to shilling for Fox, for example. And it's like the dude just left the market. And in order to even try to defend some of the stuff that's going on, you're going against the organization that you still rely on for coverage. You're pissing off half the fan base who doesn't want to hear negative stuff. And there's just no logical reason to do it. Like I would argue it's the much tougher road. There are large swaths of audience that do not want negative or pessimistic conversations because sports is a distraction. So I think deeply philosophically for me, it's one of those things where like every time the Kings win now it's, how do you feel about, better without Fox, huh? Better without Fox. And I'm going, you know what? Of course I want this team to win and I'm happy that they're winning and I'd love to be wrong. But at the same time, if the Spurs make the playoffs next year and the Kings don't, I'm not saying that'll happen. I'm saying if that did, imagine if guys like you and me went around and kept receipts on everybody and held it over their head and went, we were right, we were right, we were right. I'd be like the worst person in the world. It's a no-win situation because you either analyze everything and tell what you think is your truth to the fan base, which constantly screams for non-biased, non-shilling coverage and real coverage from people who have a connection to the organization, or an echo chamber and pom-poms. And that doesn't mean we're right. But it sometimes is difficult to take that road knowing the rollback you're going to get. That probably bothers me a lot more than it bothers you.
No, I mean, I appreciate the sentiment from a logic standpoint because you're dead on. I mean, the easy play is to pander. That's all there is to it. The easy play, it's funny, and don't clip this because he's a guy who I'm friendly with. There's a guy named Big Rich out in Oklahoma City. He's a famous Oklahoma City Thunder fan. He's also a local business owner. When Kevin Durant left OKC and everybody was angry with Kevin Durant, Big Rich is the guy who on video burned Kevin's jersey in front of his actual apartment. And it went viral and it made Thunder fans really, really happy. You know what I mean? Like
right.
And I remember looking at that going, oh man, like I think it helped, his businesses. I think it made the fan base happy. That is the easy play. You're right. I mean, honestly, if we're being objective, I mean, your breakdown applies mostly to you. I'm looking at everything. I mean, certainly the more I criticize the Kings, the more it pisses them off. If I was looking at this through a Kings fan filter, the other thought would be that terrible analogy. I'm going to try it anyway. Like if somebody you care about is in a relationship and that person they were with is pretty good, but not perfect for them, and they just trash them when they're done, there's part of you that's kind of going, okay, but how about you learn from that relationship and then grow from it, move on to the next one. And so if you alienate somebody like Fox, who has respect around the NBA, you got to remember that it's not just in a vacuum. You're not just, letting Fox hear it and that's it. Every other star player around the league will pay attention to the way Fox is treated. And then the opinion that they have will go backwards after these recent years and I've told the Kings this recently, their reputation in the coaching community has gone backwards. The reputation in the player community has gone backwards. And things like how you treat a guy who, played really hard and tried his best and was good off the court for 8 seasons with a bad finish is the type of thing that the next free agent is going to think about, and things of that nature. So this organization has fixed a lot of its stuff in recent years. But things like that, and with the fan base being part of that ecosystem, swing it back in the other direction.
Sam Amick of The Athletic. It's a good conversation to have, and glad to have this whole thing out tomorrow as De'Aaron Fox does return with the San Antonio Spurs. 2 Golden, 1 Center. You can read Sam Amick, brought to you by Jiffy Lube, all over The Athletic. Follow him on Twitter as well. Appreciate you, brother. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys. Be good.
All right, take care. We are late for a break. When we come back, Kings Rewind, as we'll look back on last night's game in a very fun way that only Chris and Jason can do. We'll do that next.